Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. It's me, Laura, and I am from Law of Attraction Life Coaching, and I specialise in anxiety and depression and helping people to become their best selves. I release a podcast weekly, and during these podcasts I like to give advice about how you can change your life for the better. So today I wanted to talk to you a bit about mental health, because it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and I think that this is something that's really important to talk about, really important to discuss, because despite all of the good work that has happened probably over the last 10 years, where people have began to acknowledge that mental health issues is actually something that's very apparent in most people's lives, there is still a stigma around mental health, and there's still kind of like the uneasiness where people don't really want to talk about it, which is a bit of a shame, because every single human being on this planet is at some point going to suffer from something that falls underneath the bracket of mental health illness or issues. And when you put it into that context, it seems strange that it's something that we still have this stigma about sort of talking about. And I suppose it's one of the sort of last taboos in a way, that people want to keep it secret because they're frightened of being judged. But what I want to say is that if you are suffering from mental health illness at the moment or any issues, I want you to realise that you're not alone, and that you're not being judged, and that the majority of the people that you're surrounded by, whether they want to acknowledge it or not, have actually been through some form of mental health issue during their lives. Now, there's a few types of mental illness now, mental health issues, illness, whatever you would like to call it. There's a few types. Now, one is related to an incident, so that can be brought on by something happening to you. And this can be brought on by, tragedy or trauma. So people can often suffer from anxiety, depression, being triggered by something happening in their life. And this could be a bereavement, this could be losing a job, something, a life-changing episode. So even something joyful as having a child can often stem a mental health crisis, and this is because people lose their identity and they go through a traumatic process physically, talking in regards to women, hormonally. But I think there's a lot of kind of negativity about mental health, and actually, when a mental health crisis happens, it's often because we've ignored something for too long. So if you're suffering from anxiety, suffering from depression, any other type of mental health crisis, whether it be agoraphobia, or a fear of going out, or something that is related to having a mental health crisis, often it stems from the fact that we have ignored our emotions, our feelings, the things that are going on in our mind for too long. And it gets to the point where almost the body reacts in a negative way to get your attention. And so this could be, a constant anxiety, constant fear, a feeling of just abject depression where you don't want to do anything. Now, these don't tend to just happen. You don't just tend to be okay one minute and then the next minute you wake up and you're suffering from agoraphobia or from severe anxiety. This is spurred on by something, and something that's really important, I think, is to check in with yourself regularly, and give yourself the ability to feel the emotions that you're feeling, whether that's stress or upset or loneliness, whatever it is that you're suffering from, because when we check in ourselves weekly, daily, and we give the ability for our bodies and our minds and our hearts to feel the emotions that are going on a daily, weekly basis, then these things don't turn into mental health crises. that's sort of how to avoid it, I suppose. And being aware and being authentic to our true selves, questioning what it is that we want in our lives and actually aiming for that can, help you to avoid a crisis where you're suffering anxiety or depression because your life isn't actually what you want it to be. So what do we do when we are suffering from a crisis? How do we get ourselves out of it? Well, there's a great phrase that's used, and it's quoted, that's from Lao Tzu, I'm not sure if it is, but saying that if we are depressed, then we are living in the past, and if we're anxious, we're living in the future. And that slightly feels like it's oversimplifying things a little bit, and I know that mental health is much more complex than that, but there is some level that rings true within that. If you're suffering from anxiety, it tends to be because you're thinking about the things that are going to happen in the future. And often when we're worrying about things, we're worrying about things that are never going to happen. So I'd like you to kind of sit and think about that a little bit. If you're suffering from anxiety at the moment, what is it that you're anxious about? Because when we're anxious, it's because we're catastrophizing. We're concerned about something that may happen in the future. And I would probably say, if you think about 95% of the things that you've thought about over your life and you've worried about, 95% of those things never came true. And you catastrophized and you worried and you thought and you disturbed your present moment for no reason. And I know that's easier said than done, but actually when you can begin to quell the nervousness that happens inside of our mind by suggesting that actually the worry isn't effective, that worrying isn't helpful, we can distract ourselves and look for things that would be helpful in that moment. So worrying isn't a technique that helps you to change your life, nor is it something that helps to problem solve for whatever it is that you're anxious about. So it really is a waste of time. It really is pointless. I say if you worry, you suffer twice, because you suffer in the present moment, and then when if the thing happens, which most of the time it doesn't, you have suffered both times. So you needn't do that. So be very wary about worrying. And it's best to put your mind to either problem solving or reckon with the fact that worrying and being anxious isn't helpful. And actually the reason why you're worried is because of an autonomic nervous response that causes you to suffer from anxiety, because of the caveman in your mind is trying to protect you. And he catastrophizes. He looks at things in the most fatalistic point of view. And when you realise that actually that the majority of the things he's thinking about are not going to happen, you can begin to calm it down. Now, I've got a podcast on the channel which talks about ways that you can actually cope with an autonomic nervous response. And when you can kind of notice that you're starting to feel anxious, you're starting to feel fearful, actually, all of that is due to a fight or flight response, and all of that can be calmed down. And if you're going down the beginning thought processes where you're setting off an autonomic nervous response, then you can begin to calm it by doing some processes like focusing on your breathing, like having a hot bath, possibly looking into some herbal remedies if that's something that you would like to go down. But check out the podcast because it gives you some more strategies. Now, depression is a little bit more complex, but actually it all comes down to everything that's going on inside your head again. And I can remember when I was really depressed that actually all I ever thought was negative things. There was nothing positive. It was as if my brain had gotten locked into a cycle of looking for negative things. And so you can kind of hack this reaction by consciously looking for positive things. And when you consciously look for positive things, you strengthen the neural pathways in your brain, and you create the reaction with neuroplasticity to make your brain more positive. Now, this is easier said than done. When you're in a normal state, your brain thinks about 80,000 thoughts a day. It's been tracked to have 75% of those are being negative most of the time because of the way that the caveman in our mind catastrophizes. But what is important is that you are in control of your brain. You are in control of your thoughts. And if you take the time to intentionally look for positive things, before you know it, your brain will be being more positive. Now, when you're suffering from depression, this can be a tough one, because there tends to be a few things going on. Not only has your brain gotten into this very negative cycle where it's only able to think negative thoughts and look for negativity, there's also often chemical depression that is going on. Now, if you're suffering from chemical depression for one reason or another, you need to go and see your doctor. And perhaps looking into some, treatment with SSRIs and antidepressants, maybe some anti-anxiety tablets may be helpful for you. That may not be the route that some people want to go down. So maybe looking into definitely the food that you're eating, because the food that you're eating supports everything that's going on inside your body. If you are not eating good food, you cannot expect to feel good. And so you want to eat a nutrient-dense diet. You want to make sure that you're getting enough sleep, but not too much sleep. There were some interesting studies done a while back, which when people were subjected to one night of sleep deprivation, their anxiety and their depression was relieved, and the symptoms that they felt, that they've almost felt cured from the depression the day after, which is quite interesting, because when we're depressed we often go into patterns where we don't sleep at night and we suffer from insomnia in the night time, but people want to sleep in the daytime, and this shift in our circadian rhythm doesn't help with feeling good. So I would say that if you are somebody that sleeps in the daytime, take that nighttime period. Don't sleep for a night. Get up, stay awake for the whole day, and then that night, after you've stayed up all night and all day, you want to go to bed at a reasonable time, because you will reset your circadian rhythm, and you'll be so tired that you will sleep because you have been awake. Okay, and this process can reset your circadian rhythm. You can do this if you're suffering from jet lag, which is really good. So don't sleep during the daytime. Reset your circadian rhythm. Come back to sleep at the normal time that you should be sleeping, and you should see some improvement in the day that you're suffering from sleep deprivation. You should see some benefits for your mental health state and some easing of depression. Now, you want to sleep enough and not too much. Now, what that means to you, that's different for everyone, but generally between 7 to 10 hours a night is suitable, but you also need to be getting the right types of sleep. So, things like 5-HTP, passion flower, valerian, tryptophan, which is an amino acid, eating tryptophan-rich foods like turkey, eggs, milk. These are things that might be helpful to you before bedtime, but you want to sleep properly. Exercise is paramount. When we're depressed, we seem to want to kind of curl up and do nothing, which, again, it's about fighting for what helps you. And yes, it's difficult. Yes, when we're depressed, we want to lie in bed and we want to do nothing, but this doesn't help us. And it's the same thing that when you're fat and you want to lose weight, you want to eat chocolate. Just because it's something that's going on inside your mind, it doesn't mean you need to succumb to the things that are happening in your head. So you need to focus on doing positive things for yourself. Get up, go and have a walk, get some rest, make sure you're eating good food, and, do your best. Do something that you enjoy. When we become depressed, we often forego things like going out and seeing friends, doing hobbies, things like this, because it can seem too much energy. But it's like a catch-22 cycle. You have to force yourself to do these things, because in forcing yourself to do these things, you will begin to feel better. And I know it sounds counterintuitive that you don't feel good, you're tired, you're depressed, you're not sleeping at night, you're sleeping in the day, you don't want to look after yourself, you don't want to exercise, you don't want to eat well. That's all very well and good, but it's a catch-22 cycle, and once you begin in it, once you go down the pathway, it becomes more and more difficult to come out. And so having a small amount of self-discipline and ensuring that you do these things that will make you feel better, you can catch yourself sooner and bring yourself up quicker and stop yourself falling into depression faster. Now, having, a mental health advocate around you can be really helpful. So if you are suffering from these things, you can ask a friend to help you, get them to bring you over some healthy food, get them to have a chat with you, go out for a walk with them, have an accountability buddy that kind of asks you and brings you out. Now, there's been some really interesting studies to show about the foods that we eat and about some vitamin deficiency actually being in relation to anxiety and depression. And so it might be an idea to look into ensuring that you have enough B vitamins in your diet, trying niacin, which is a type of B vitamin. I think it's B3, off the top of my head. And there's been some interesting studies to show that people who have deficiency in B vitamins not only suffer from anxiety but depression, and when this is corrected, the anxiety and the depression is completely and utterly alleviated. So making sure that you're eating a good nutrient dense food that is not full of packaged sodium high fat foods, natural plant-based, as close to the original as possible is important, because you may be suffering from anxiety and depression because of a nutrition deficiency, and you believe that it's a mental health issue, whereas actually it's an anatomical, physiological issue. And you could go through these processes of having talking therapies and CBT, and all of those aren't really going to help because you're not looking at the original issue, the original problem. So, people that could be helpful to speak to is maybe a nutritionist at that time, maybe a naturopath, maybe a dietitian. I'm definitely speaking to your GP at the time as well, and just having a full blood count done. Things like hypothyroidism can bring on depression. And often people go in to the doctor and they say, I'm feeling depressed, and they say, well, that's very sad, and then they give you a prescription for drugs. And although drug therapy can be helpful, it's not really looking at the problem or the why, and you need to fix the why and not just treat the symptoms. Depression and anxiety are symptoms of something, and whether it's a symptom of a bad diet, a symptom of bad sleep, a symptom of an uncontrolled autonomic nervous system response, or an overactive mind, or something else, a nutritional deficiency, then you need to work out what that is. And sometimes it can take a while to get there, but if you try a multi-fold approach, and you look at trying your sleep for a week, if that doesn't work, then try your food for a week. If that doesn't work, then try exercise for a week. See what works for you. Try and hack yourself and work out what works for you, and listen to your body. Your body will tell you what's working and what isn't working. Don't just go to your doctor and say, and listen to what they're saying. They are really important. Don't just listen to me. Don't just listen to your friends. Listen to your body, try different approaches and see what works for you. But most of all, understand that mental health is completely normal. Suffering from mental health issues is completely normal. It's something that everybody goes through, whether they want to talk about it or not, or acknowledge it or not. And there's nothing to be ashamed about. It's just about finding a way to move yourself through it, so then you are coming back to being your old happy self again. And if you haven't been a happy self, then finding that. But you can do it. So have strength and keep going, because no matter how hard things get, I promise you that once you find the remedy for yourself, life does improve. There is hope at the end of the tunnel, or light at the end, mixing metaphors, light at the end of the tunnel, and there is always something good, you know. And you know, I suffered from a depression really badly when I was younger, and I thought that it was hopeless and that life would never get better, and that, you know, things would never get better. And I wish I could go back to tell my younger self, actually, like, dude, don't worry about it so much, like, honestly, you're going to have an amazing life. And I'm so glad that I wasn't able to follow suit on some of the, you know, times that my brain told me I'd be better off dead, because if I had, then I wouldn't have this wonderful life that I have now. And I'm genuinely grateful for the wonderful life that I have now, and I'm not a special case. You know, you can find happiness if you're suffering from mental health issues, and you will. Just take time with yourself, be kind to yourself, and don't stop trying. Try everything. Look at your diet, look at your exercise plan, look at your sleep, look at the way that you treat your body, look at the way that you treat yourself in your mind, the things that you say to yourself. You know, look to be more positive on a daily basis, and you should begin to see that your life begins to improve. You know, and it's instilling these positive habits that actually change the brain structure that makes you a different person. So good luck. If you want any more help or advice, get in touch. My email is within the About section. There's loads of other podcasts to listen to. I've got an Instagram page which has got daily inspirational ideas, posts, quotes, so forth, that you might enjoy. And actually what I'd like to do is do a little competition. So if you like, share, subscribe, then what I will do is I will enter you into a competition, and the winner will receive an hour consultation with me where we can talk about some of the things that are going on in your life and come up with a positive plan to see you go forward, and it'll be completely free. So like my page, like it, share, you know, subscribe, find your favorite video, share it with your friends. It doesn't have to be this one, and then you can pop in the comments down below on the bottom of this video just to say that you've shared and that you'd like to be entered into the competition. And then all of the people who go into it, I will add you into a hat, and we'll do a little live kind of thing where we look at who the winner is, and whoever the winner is, I will get in contact with you, and we can do a consultation call either by Skype or telephone call or whatever's most suitable for you, and we can see what we can do to fix whatever issues you're having in your life. Okay, good luck guys. Thanks ever so much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.